Hello and welcome to Escaping Kasterborous, the podcast where we rewatch, reminisce and review everything Doctor Who from 2005 to present. My name is Rich and I'm joined by the one person I know who has 4 hyper vodkas for our breakfast. It's Amy.
God, I'd feel ill if I did that.
I just go through the episodes and think, right, what can I take from this to introduce Amy with? There's not just saying you're the villain of the week.
I was going to say.
I nearly went with the one woman who can't seem to count how many legs she has. But then after that point, Captain Jack says 4 hyper vodkas. I'm like, cool, I'll go with that.
Hyper vodkas, let's go with that. At least I'm not the gas mask child, so that's good.
Yes. But welcome to episode 10 of Doctor Who Series 1 and also Escaping Kasterborous Series 1. Get it? Because we're syncing up. Even though I think before we even get started, Amy and I have been discussing this about whether come season 2 of Escaping Kasterborous and also getting into the second series of Doctor Who, whether we do the 2-part stories as one podcast instead. Because
which we think might be slightly easier. Last
week we covered all the characters and everything. There are no new characters get introduced really in this episode. So there's not really as much to talk about this time.
So apologies if this is slightly shorter.
Yeah, this one might be slightly shorter. But it also means that if we do 2-parters, like the podcast could go on for a little bit longer. Like if it was an hour and a half, for example.
That'd probably be better.
You'd have an hour and a half to listen to rather than an hour podcast one week and then just half an hour the next week, which seems kind of pointless. So we think we're gonna do, starting with series 2, we'll do a podcast for the 2-parters. Interestingly, when we get to after the next episode and we hit the 2-parter for the end of the story, I've never really considered that a 2-parter. I've always seen them as like 2 episodes that they do follow on from each other, but like not so much that I see that as like 50% of a full story. I see it as Act 1 and Act 2 of a bigger finale.
It's not like the way that this was 50% of a story.
Yeah. But anyway, that's not important because we're going to talk about the Doctor dances. And I mentioned last week that this was the thing that this is the specific episode of the Empty Child saga, for lack of a better phrase, that scarred me as a kid. This was aired on the 28th of May, 2005.
Why did this one scar you more than the last one?
Because I think this is the only part of it I actually saw, when it originally aired. I don't think I saw the Empty Child part, or just the Empty Child. I don't think I saw that air on the day it aired, because I think I mentioned this like on the first episode of this podcast. When I was young, I was doing all my dance classes, and a Saturday night was one of those things where I was going to be at my dance classes. It's why I didn't grow up with Saturday morning cartoons or stuff like that. If I got the chance to sit and watch Dick and Dom at the Bungalow, it was because my dancing classes weren't on or I was ill or something. I never got to watch any of that. So school on Monday morning, everyone's talking about whatever. Is it SMTV? Was that a thing?
Yeah, it was, but I never watched it.
Yeah, like all the big Saturday morning shows and stuff like that. Everyone would always talk about that, and I was like, I was doing my ballet classes and my tap dancing, so I don't know all of that stuff. So Empty Child was one that I think I watched for the first time properly. I think I might have seen clips of it on the BBC website when you'd had to download Real Player, which I think we did talk about before.
Oh my god, Real Player.
Yeah. And so I'd only seen bits and bobs of that. But Doctor Dances is the one that I remember seeing, because the day that this aired, I remember this so vividly. My family, or like some relatives on my mum's side, had a caravan, a static caravan at a holiday park in Great Yarmouth. And occasionally on weekends we would go there. And I remember this Saturday, the 28th of May, 2005, I finished my classes and we went straight to Great Yarmouth. It's about, an hour away from where I'm from in Lincolnshire? Hour and a bit, maybe. And I remember like saying to my dad, like, are we there yet? Are we there? I want to get in so we can watch Doctor Who. I don't want to miss this because I missed last week's. I want to watch this week's. And I remember getting in, and I think we might have been, I don't remember how far in we were. We may have been at the point when the Doctor was in his room and the tape recorder ends. I think that might have been whereabouts we were. But that night, we watched that latter, I don't know, half of that episode.
Yeah.
And we get to the the technically 2 transformations that happen in this episode, because we said this last week that they didn't go overboard
thank God.
the transformation sequences in the episode. Most likely down to the fact that they probably didn't have the budget to do all of these pretty good looking effects, actually.
Yeah, they were not bad, actually.
And so one of them happens like off screen. You have the guy that's locked up. Is it Jenkins, Perkins?
Something like that, I don't know.
Whatever. And you've got Nancy locked up with him. And he really goes overboard with it.
Yeah.
Which was creepy enough. And then just look at the camera cutting back to Nancy and hearing the sound of the... I don't even know how to...
It's kind of like a crunching...
Yeah,
kind of,
it's
like a crunchy, squelchy kind of noise.
Yeah,
it's not very nice.
It's not, no. And you sort of hear that happening, and I'm there, like, on the sofa. Like, I can remember this so vividly, being on the sofa in this caravan thinking, oh, God, I don't like this. Ugh. And then once we get to the point that the Doctor, Jack, and Rose have made it to the railway station, and they come across, what's his name? Algie?
Yeah, I think it's Algie.
And Jack's like, oh, it's me, Jack. And he goes, Mummy. And it's like, oh, no, it's going to happen again. But this time, he falls down and you see it profile. And you see how much the front of his face, like, sticks out. And then you get the close-up of it, of his mouth, like, it's sort of the end of his mouth, like, turning into the metal grate and it blacking up. And then his eyes growing. It's so snappy compared to the Dr. Constantine one in The Empty Child. But even just watching that genuinely got me. Watching that again tonight, that is the thing.
It's so quick. I almost kind of missed it.
Yeah, but it's so well done.
Oh,
and
yeah, absolutely.
It shows you the bits that we remember from the Constantine one. It's like, there's his mouth changing, there's his eyes changing. You're seeing it from the side to see how much it like messes with this guy's face.
Yeah.
And that's what stuck with me. That's what scarred me. The Constantine one is creepy, but that one is the one that killed me as a kid. And
I think it's because it's so unexpected.
Yeah, it is just so sudden. Like
he's all of a sudden one minute he's like, what are you on about, Jenkins or whoever, blah, 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 you know? And then all of a sudden he's just kind of like, he's walking around, he's chatting to the other soldier, and then all of a sudden it's like, Mummy, it's like, no, nah.
Yeah, like, you've had the one transformation of Jenkins, it is Jenkins, and you think, okay, that's the episode's transformation done, and then surprise, here's another one. And yeah, that got me. But my little brother, back then, he would have been, 6, I think? Yeah, he'd been 6. He wasn't scared of anything.
No.
Genuinely anything. I was scared of everything. He wasn't scared of anything. So he then proceeded to spend the rest of the night saying, "Are you my mummy?" to me.
Of course he
just did. To get on my tits. And my God, he did. And we were in this caravan in Great Yarmouth. If you've ever stayed in a static caravan, or even just a normal caravan, but static caravans, even the walls on the inside, they're not very thin. They have to stay light and stuff. And he was there were 2 bedrooms at the end of it, both with like 2 single beds in each. My brother and sister were in one, and I was in the other by myself. And he was up against the wall going, "Are you my mummy? Are you my mummy?"
That's so typical, Will.
Through the wall. And I'm like, "Will, I'm going to smack you." And so, yeah, he was doing that the entire night. And I'm already there in bed, like, crapping myself. Because I've got him saying that, and picturing this guy transforming. And then that night in Great Yarmouth, it was windy as bloody anything. So the entire caravan was shaking. So I'm in bed trying to sleep. I've got the picture of this guy transforming in my mind. I've got my brother through the wall saying, "Are you my mummy?" And the whole caravan shaking and creaking. And it's like, I'm not okay with this.
So it wasn't the episode that scared you, it was your brother.
Well, the episode is what spurred it. And like I said, the visual images were there. He was the one putting the audio back, and then my whole room was shaking. I was horrified. And
you're just a wuss.
I was a wuss. I would not dispute that. I was a wuss so much. But that night is what haunts me about this episode to this day. Like, it was a triple threat of windy night, shaky caravan, dickhead little brother who realised this is scaring me and is going to take it to the next level, and then my brain, as the human mind can do, which is, hey, this thing scares you, keep thinking about it.
Yeah, literally.
It's like when I don't like the Saw films, and yet one night I found myself watching all of the traps on YouTube, and I'm like, why do I do this? Why do I do this to myself? But I'm doing it.
Oh, you're such a weirdo.
I am, but that was what I mentioned, like briefly mentioned last week about this being the episode that got me, not the empty child. So going back to it now, like I said, that transformation scene with Algie still gets me. Even now, like I said, it's still...
That's quite surprising. I'm the sort of person that once I've been exposed to something, like, enough, I just don't really care about it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, obviously certain things do still scare me, but, like, I can watch, like, Blink now and just not really care. Like, you know, back when Five Nights at Freddy's first came out, and that was absolutely, like, terrifying.
Oh, yeah, that was horrifying.
I can watch that now and I'm just like, like, you know.
Like I said, it's the rest of it's fine. None of that bothers me anymore. But just that one transformation sequence still... It's not something I can't watch, but I don't think I was expecting it to send a shiver up my spine like it did when we just watched it now. Like, whoa.
Shall we talk about
go on, then.
the first... what's it called? The cold open? Is that what it's called?
Well, yeah, the cold open. So the rundown of
so the rundown of the last episode.
Yeah.
Because obviously they've done that amazing thing again, where they do the rundown of the last episode, and then it just seamlessly blurs into the start of the new episode without, like, you know, a cut.
Putting the titles in between. Yeah.
And this week we've got the fantastic "Go to Your Room," which I absolutely love, and I completely forgot it was a thing until it started, and I turned to you and I went, "Oh, I forgot about this bit. I really like this bit." And he says so, and he goes, "Go to your room, go to your room," and eventually, obviously, they do. And then he has that fantastic line of, "Oh, thank God that worked. Those would have been terrible last words." I really enjoy that. And then the title sequence kicks in. But
I find that to be like one of the best moments of Eccleston. You see him transition from I am like terrified my own life. Like the number of times that I think he says, "I don't know what I'm going to do here." He says it's sort of implied at the beginning of the episode, at the end of the last one, when they're being surrounded by the zombies, and he's like, "I don't know how to fight this."
It's kind of like a trope of the episode.
I can't boot somebody, because if I do, I'm gonna change. And he does it again at the end with like, "What's what we're gonna do?" And he goes, "I don't know." Like,
it's kind of
I just don't know.
It's kind of like his thing throughout this episode, which is just like he's basically just kind of trying to work out what's happening. Like he's got no real say over what actually is going on, and like, you know, he can't really do anything about it. It's not like one of those Doctor saves the day kind of instances. It's basically just like the Doctor is kind of like just there for the audience's viewpoint.
Yeah.
In this, it's kind of like this is how you're viewing it through his perspective of like not really knowing what's going on, and you're working out at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah, that whole sorry.
No, you.
That whole hospital scene, obviously, because like, you know, you've got sort of several different like areas to the hospital, haven't you? You've got obviously the bit where they're stuck and they get out by sort of saying, you know, go to your room and whatnot. And then you've got Captain Jack, as he's now known, thanks to Rose.
Yeah.
And his blaster majig thing, whatever it's called.
The Sonic Blaster.
Yeah,
that's it.
And like them going upstairs to the tape room, which I always, again, was really kind of like, I kept turning to you and going, "Oh, is this bit? Oh, is this bit?" And you were just kind of like, "Yes, watch it."
Yeah.
But I really, really enjoyed that bit where they're upstairs I really enjoyed the whole hospital sequence. I think it's like a really cool sequence. But the bit where they're upstairs in the room and the child goes from saying, "Are you my mummy on the tape?" to saying, "I am here." And it's like at that point,
I'm
you're sort
here,
of like,
can't you see me?
Oh no, this is any trouble.
Yeah, like it's not even a jump scare. Like it's led in really well. It's more of that moment of when, if you notice it before Rose does, you're there going, "Oh God,
yeah, like something's gonna happen."
But then when it is explained to you and you know that it's gonna happen, like in a horror film, when you can tell a jump scare is gonna happen, it takes the whole jump scare out of it. But because you know of the threat, you know how impossible this child is.
Yeah.
having him in that room, even if he's the other side of the table, and admittedly at this point he's blocking the way out, but we know that Jack's got a sonic blaster.
Yeah.
It still creeps you out because it's a creepy image. A kid in a gas mask, the sort of hollow eyes of it, the odd shape of it, and obviously it's been given a different sort of context, I guess.
Yeah.
Being like part of the whole narrative of this is how this in inverted commas alien looks, or the threat looks, and seeing him there again, it's just like, Christ, I didn't need that.
This is terrifying. But also I think what's more scary is the fact that he changes what he says, because like obviously we were saying last episode about the fact that it's one of those kind of repetition things that's like, the reason it's scary is because it's unrelenting kind of repetition. But this episode gets slightly scarier because it changes what it says based on the situation. So saying like, I am here, can't you see me, is like creepier because that's the inherent threat then, rather than just like kind of the overarching like, are you my mummy? Because that gets like, you know, when you're listening to it on the tape, it almost becomes kind of like you go from being scared of it to feeling sorry for it. Because you understand obviously then what's happened, sort of that it's a kid that's just looking for its mummy, hence why Dr. Constantine on the tape is like, do you know where you are? Like, can you tell me this or whatever? And it becomes kind of less about like the fact that it's scary and more about the fact that it's like almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Like sorrowful. And so changing what the kid then says to say, like, I'm here, can't you see me, is like, that's how you bring it back to...
It's reaffirming that you should be scared of this kid, or you shouldn't feel...
safe.
Sorry for him, or say,
Well, it's not that you shouldn't feel sorry for him.
You should feel sorry for him.
Yeah, but I think it's more that it, like... Because, like you said, it's realising it before the Doctor and Rose realise it. Because the reason they obviously changed what he was saying was so that you had that, like, initial thing of, like, that's a different... He's never said that before. Why? And then you sort of think, I am here. Oh, God, he's in the room. And they've not noticed it. And you're just like, why haven't you noticed it?
Yeah.
And the fact that the Doctor goes, oh, that was the tape running out about 30 seconds ago. And then it's just kind of like, oh, my God.
So literally, directly following that scene, we have... the banana.
Oh my God!
Like we've had the name drop of the factories that the blaster was made in, and Jack says, "Oh, there was the explosion. They're all disintegrated now." And the Doctor goes, "Like I said, once
I've been there once. Yeah,
they've got banana grove there now. Banana's good." And then he switches Jack's blaster with it. It literally, I think the Doctor does that purely for the sake of showing off to Rose, because you see how much of a badass he looks. He like has this sort of weird, like he pushes his bottom jaw forward as he pulls out the blaster. She's like proper, shoots out the wall, and he goes, "Go, don't drop the banana. Why? Good source of potassium." It's again, it's those little quirks that they just add like a sprinkling on top of this overall more dark Doctor, kind of like what it is at the beginning when he says, "Oh, there'd have been terrible last words." You got Rose and Jack, like, you know, they've just crapped a brick, and the Doctor's there like, ha, ha, ha. Thank God for that.
It's very much Nine's kind of character, isn't it? Like that little tiny sprinkling of humour. And this banana thing goes on for like a few beats, doesn't it? So you've got the sort of swapping it out for the banana, and then you've got the good source of potassium, and then you talk about, oh, is there really a banana plantation and blah, blah, blah. Like, for some reason, the banana is, like, a thing that just kind of is like... And then Jack, what is it later on? Jack is like, we've got a banana.
Well, I've got a banana and you could put some shelves
in a pinch. I love that whole thing of, like, them arguing about what Sonic is he's got when he says it's a screwdriver. It's like... Yeah. I mean, you don't really realise... You think, like, the Sonic screwdriver is kind of one of these, like, all-powerful... Like, oh my God, it's the Sonic screwdriver, which in... Is it Matt Smith's era? It kind of became like or is it Capaldi? It's more later on when it becomes kind of the reliance on the sonic screwdriver that's like super annoying.
With Matt Smith, it was more of he just never put the bloody thing away.
Yeah.
Kind of in Capaldi's era, mainly with the sonic sunglasses, because I don't really recall seeing the TARDIS blue Sonic that frequently with Capaldi in Series 10, and then obviously the Sonic in Whittaker's era. It just she never puts it away.
So overused.
She never puts it away.
I mean, that's obviously not her fault. That's bad writing, but like
it's iffy writing. But Yeah, it's genuinely it's a dick measuring contest between Jack and the Doctor.
Absolutely. Like,
They've literally made that joke in Day of the Doctor when Tennant and Smith compare their screwdrivers.
Oh yeah,
and
when
Tennant
they're
says
pushing
compensating regeneration. It's a lottery. And like that's all it is. It is literally like it's a pissing contest. It's let's see how far you can piss, and that like when Jack says, "Oh, this really drains the battery," and Rose is like, "Battery? I'll have the screwdriver then." That just seemes to continue working.
Yeah.
And yeah, the Sonic is great in Series 1 because it is so like sparingly
infrequently used. Yeah,
it's used to open doors. It's used to resonate concrete,
which I'm not sure
whatever.
he even believed was going to happen. Like, you know, you sort of look at him and think, do you really think that's going to resonate the concrete?
And even then, it's like, as Jack has said, there's like a 7-story drop out there. How is getting the bars off the window going to help at all?
Yeah.
But that pissing contest between the Doctor and Jack is great because obviously the Doctor is trying his damned hardest to sort of re-show off again.
Yeah.
And, you know, Rose saying, why is it always the great looking ones that have to disappear? And the Doctor says, like, I'm trying not to be offended here.
And she's like, I mean men. And he's like, what?
Wait, what? Like, yeah.
Like, that makes it better?
Yeah. It's really interesting seeing that dynamic between the Doctor and Jack. Because obviously with last episode, you don't see Jack as much. At least with the Doctor, like that relationship is explored so very briefly, and then there is a bit of a clash, and there's a bit of fun and like jabbing fun at each other, and then it sort of comes back to the pissing contest, and then there's obviously Rose convinces the Doctor at the end to go back and save Jack.
Yeah,
because the Doctor's like busy talking, and he knows he's gonna die, and I think the Doctor was just gonna go, yeah, screw him.
But also, obviously, he manages to sort of get Jack to save them because, you know, in that bit where he goes, I've taken care of his psychology and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, get the bomb away.
It's like, you know, Jack did the kind of right thing by taking it and not really worrying about... Well, I mean, obviously he was worried about whether he was going to die or not, but like, you know...
Well, that's why he kept asking the computer, like, how can I survive this? And the computer's like...
Under the sink!
Computer says no, quite frankly.
But yeah, it's that whole everybody lives thing, because for some reason I forgot that, like, actually this once everybody does live. It's like literally no one dies in this whole episode.
Yeah.
And it was like when the Doctor was saying everybody lives, I was like, there's got to be some sort of catch here. Like, surely not everyone can live. And then obviously you have the whole thing of like going to Jack, and I was like, oh, but then I sort of forgot that like Jack, I knew obviously he survived, but like I'd forgotten how, and then all of a sudden it was like that beautiful shot of dragging backwards from Jack's cockpit and then just sort of ending up on
into
the TARDIS.
They just bolted the set onto the TARDIS set.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
And went from there. It's a good. I was saying to you, like, I'm really excited to see this shot again because it does look so good. Because
you just don't expect it. You expect it to kind of like drift backwards off the ship and just sort of say like goodbye to Jack, and then all of a sudden you get Rose going, Are you coming then?
Are you coming or what? Yeah. Close the doors. Your ship's about to explode. There's going to be a draft. It's actually kind of hard to realize that Jack isn't immortal here.
No,
he's completely
of course,
mortal.
that's it.
And it's like when we get to Parting of the Ways and you see his fate, and you kind of go, "Oh, he's fine," and then you realize, "Oh, wait, no,
he's not.
He's not." Oh god.
It's also, speaking of beautiful shots, that bit where.
The warship alarm
goes off, and it does that amazing like moving shot down the hallway into the kid's face.
It's like a weird swinging shot with all the lights are swinging as well.
Wonderful, I love that. It kind of reminds me of I might get this wrong. Who's your favourite? Edgar Wright.
Yeah.
Because you know, obviously he does the movement shots, but he actually does them like the way you see them. So like he'll swing and stop rather than like starting and reversing the shot. Was that what you said to me?
Wait, do you mean Wes Anderson?
No, you know, in the guy who directed the Shaun of the Dead and that lot.
Yes,
you know, when he does like the movement shots, but he starts there and moves away rather than like swinging back and stopping and reversing it or whatever.
Yeah. So when he's doing like whip pans, he had a camera operator. Is in Shaun of the Dead, like I think there's a discussion with Edgar Wright There's the point in Shaun of the Dead when
he's got the mug on the table.
Shaun is doing his whole big plan, and he's like, "We'll go back to my house, have a cup of tea, and wait for all this to blow over." There's a shot when the camera pans away from something, and it whips to the mug that Shaun's holding, and then the camera moves back.
Yeah.
And how that isn't a shot that's reversed. Like it said, that's not a reversed shot. I just have this like ridiculously good camera operator who can whip to have that like bang in the middle. And after doing so much because I did media production at university, and Edgar Wright is a big inspiration to me. So I've always tried to do stuff like that in my own kind of work, and trying to do whips to get something bang in the center. I did it not too long ago. I want to say it might have been when I was doing my Mega Drive mini B-roll.
Right.
That I shot, and I'm trying to do that where you whip it straight to the middle. If you've not got like really good tripods with like fluid heads and whatever, it's not easy. But like these guys are doing it with massive cameras, and yeah, I know what you mean now.
It's that kind of whip shot of like sort of focusing.
They got it. They angled it right up into his face. It's very blatant. Obviously, it's blatant that they have sped it up because there's this odd like motion blur effect on it too. But
I'm not saying negate, it doesn't negate how amazing that shot is.
And as we said last week, like we can really appreciate how good the cinematography is in these episodes. I think
Who was
episode
the director of this episode?
This was directed by James Hawes. Did he do
anything
Yeah,
else?
he did episode 1 as well.
I mean, obviously.
Obviously
Empty Child, yeah.
In terms of, if look, has it done much for Doctor Who?
That's what I was wondering, because like his shots are so distinctive in this two-parter. Like I don't think you sort of see.
Apparently, he was originally going to be taking over. He was going to be doing Torchwood as the producer and lead director, but that eventually went to Chibnall. Funnily enough.
Wow.
Filmography. He's done five episodes. I think he might have done some stuff in series 2 as well, because it says Doctor Who 5 episodes 2004 to 5,
right,
which would have been shooting in 2004 for series 1 and then shooting 2005 for series 2. So we'll see James Hawes again. We'll have to compare whether
the episode
like Theo has the same kind of shooting,
if we remember.
If we remember, we'll have to. Somebody take note.
Somebody remind us
who's listening, and remind us that James Hawes, we need to keep an eye on him and see if these are shot in the same kind of way. Because the cinematography is great. The whole feeling, the color palette, everything about this episode feels so.
It's so brown,
unique. Yeah,
is that like weird to say? But like the whole color
it's
palette
very,
is
like,
just brown.
It's brown. It's sort of brown, grey, and deep blue.
Yeah,
I think I've never been one to sort of analyze color palettes, even with the media degree. Color palettes is something we really.
I suppose obviously it's kind of brown because it's in the middle of like World War II.
It's the middle of the Blitz,
and,
so it's going to be dark.
Everything's dark. But also that's a point. Like this whole episode kind of happens across like an hour or like a couple of hours.
The whole two-parter is 2 hours because when Rose meets Jack, he says that
in 2 hours,
in 2 hours time a bomb is going to fall on it and it'll be destroyed forever. So give me the 50% right now.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see that this plays out over 2 hours. So you could almost say, to some extent, you could play it out in real time.
Yeah.
Because obviously this lasts an hour and a half. So give or take half an hour, you could almost see this event, the events of this episode play out.
Yeah.
Which is actually quite cool to think about. I never really thought about that before.
It's one of those things. That. And I just kept bringing up the video game reference again, didn't I? When I was like, oh, this is the stealth section when Nancy's trying to get to the...
Yeah.
I could just imagine the player having to like walk around, kind of Last of Us 2 style, where you could use your audio thing to hear where the soldiers are to try and avoid them to get to the warship.
Yeah.
But,
and then you've got the alarm going off and you go, oh no, and then doors open, final boss. Here we go.
The final boss is just a bunch of nanogenes.
Jamie in a big health bar appears. And it's like, oh no! Nancy used I'm your mama. One hit, critical hit.
It's so weird to think like this whole episode could have been solved if she'd have just gone, yeah, I'm your mum.
Yeah. And the Doctor does very much say, like, so you hid, you lied. And he has this, like, this pissed off tone. But I think at this point in time, because he's already said, I don't know, he sees this as a means of like, maybe this could work.
Yeah, so it kind of pushes her.
Obviously, he kind of like, it's not really seen as blatantly obvious as this. kind of like Gwyneth in episode 3, where it's like she's gonna give herself to save everyone.
Yeah.
And Rose is like, no, don't do it. No, don't do it. Rose maybe hasn't read into the idea that this could also not work.
Yeah.
The Doctor could say to her, go and speak to him, go and hug him, go whatever, see if the nanogenes can work it out. But otherwise, if it doesn't work, he's basically just condemned Nancy to
death.
Let's face it, death. Because the people who are the zombies just aren't themselves at all anymore. And it could have not worked, and then humanity could have been screwed.
Well, I mean, humanity was screwed anyway, I suppose. It was
like, the Doctor could have easily gone ham on her about this. But
I
obviously
mean, the thing is, though, he's got that kind of caring side as well, though. Like, I mean,
absolutely.
You know, you sort of talking about a teenage mum during, like, you know, the 1940s or whatever, 1930s it would have probably been.
1941.
No,
well,
yeah,
1930.
No, she would have been a teenage mum in the 1930s, is what I mean.
1937, she would have given birth, yeah.
So it's not obviously, like impossible, but it's relative. Obviously, by the Doctor's kind of shock, it's relatively unheard of.
Yeah.
So I think the reason it's kind of like tough love is the reason why he's a bit harder on her. But I've always really adored this episode. Like, that bit where she sort of goes up to Jamie and is like, yes, I am your mummy. I was literally crying, like, actually crying, just because it is. It
is sad, I think, because she says, you know, it's all my fault. And because she realises that throughout all of this, she could have just said,
yes,
the mummy, the titular mummy that is being looked for is her, but she's hiding away. Probably down to the shame of being a single mother, a teenage mother in the Second World War, because obviously times back then were very different to now. Like, you know, the racism, sexism, the approaches to women and whatever, like, that was all very different then than it is now. Even though, interestingly, we get one very on the nose sort of gay relationship, another one that's a little more implicit. So
is this the bit where she's in the house?
Yeah, Algie, we were talking about this last week about how Jack slaps Algie on the bum and he sort of grins it off. And Jack then says, and I kind of missed this whole section at the beginning of the training before the transformation. I always sort of brush this over because as a kid you don't know what on earth they're talking about. Now obviously you do. And Rose is like, oh no, I'll go distract the guards. And she's like, right, okay, let's get the girls out and let's go do it. And Jack's there like, trust me, you're not his type. So it's obvious, yep, they're shagging.
Yeah.
And then you've got what's his name, Mr. Lloyd.
Is that the man who? Oh, the one in the house.
That's the dad. Yeah, who puts the food. I put the food on this table, and Nancy says, "Oh, everyone thinks that your missus is messing around with what's his face, the butcher, but she's not. You are."
I love
It's like
that
basically,
bit.
I have this leverage against you. The fact that you're a closeted gay. Supposedly, it's very heavily implied that that's the case. Like, I could bring down your entire family. I could bring down all of your reputation because obviously this is a very backwards time where being gay was a bad thing. And that's really on the nose. And I love the fact that gets explored.
I just love that whole scene where she's sat in, like, because you think she's done for when, obviously, you went to me, you went, I love this bait snatch bit. And I was like, what are you on about? Bait switch, that's not bait snatch.
When his son steps around the corner with a gas mask on and then he takes it off. And it's actually, and she says, oh, I thought you were Jamie. And then sort of the dad rugby tackles her back into the house. I like how they must have like sat her down and then cleared the table and then had a talking to her. It's like, just sit there and be quiet.
Well, they were waiting for the police, weren't they?
That's true, yeah.
But I
like how
love
the mother probably was coming in and clearing the table, just tutting at her every time she saw her or something like that. But
yeah, that whole bit where she's like, where you think she's sort of done for and he's going, the police are on their way, and she's just like, no, I'll have some.
It's an awful lot of food, isn't it?
Because he goes, is there anything else you want? And she's like, yes, I'll have some wire cutters, please, and this, and that, and that.
And I'd like to take a dump before I go.
I'll have a massive big one in the toilet, please.
You got to call the police and then a plumber, Mr. Lloyd.
But no, the way she kind
I'm
of
about to be an empty child.
Oh, for God's sake. No,
I'm sorry.
That was terrible. That was awful. But anyway, like I was saying, he's absolutely gone. He's done himself in now.
I'm sorry.
I love the way that she's just so like this is why I love Nancy's character, because she doesn't take any crap from anyone.
I said this last week. She's a badass bitch.
She's so badass.
She is street tough, but she cares so much. And that's why she's such an amazing character, and why she's, apart from Jack, probably the big standout character from series 1 that isn't obviously the Doctor and Rose.
Yeah, I mean, she's
and obviously
definitely
Mickey, Jackie, etc., etc. But a single
a single story character.
Yeah.
She's kind of like
even Margaret, like even Blonfell Foch, who we'll see next week. Like, she's very, like, she is iconic in her own right, but she's not Nancy.
The only other character that I remember in the same kind of way as Nancy is and I've forgotten her name, so obviously I don't remember her that well, but the girl from the first episode of the two-parter who's stuck in the Big Brother house with the Doctor. Linda, that's the one. Linda with a Y. Her, she's the only other kind of like single character that you remember in that kind of like way, like the same way as you do Nancy.
Yeah, but like, just very quickly back to the Mr. Lloyd bit, and also Algie. Obviously, we've talked about this before, like with Russell T Davies being gay himself, and there being all this like very much sort of progressive planting in Doctor Who. Whenever that argument about like representation in media, like you've mentioned Last of Us 2 already in this podcast, and like I'm all on record, I love Last of Us 2.
Yeah, I really
think it's
enjoyed
fantastic. But the reason it's being review bombed is because of the representation it has. There is partially down to what happens, which of course I'm not going to divulge here. But and I understand people's annoyance with it, but the majority of the review bombing is based around representation. And sometimes people say, oh, this particular thing isn't there to be SJWified or PC'd and turned into some kind of propaganda machine for gay people. And yet, you look back at Doctor Who, and Doctor Who's had the same thing.
Yeah.
You had Bill Potts being a very openly gay companion.
Who she mentions like every episode.
Almost potentially a bit too much, which we will get to in Series 10. And then you had the casting of Jodie Whittaker in 17?
Yeah, something like
that. I think it was. Yeah, 2017 she was cast. And everyone going all arse about tit about that. And then you look back to 2005, technically even 2004, and go, look, it's always been here.
You just didn't notice.
It's always been here, because it's so much more implicit. And you have to, and I don't want to make a gross generalization of people here who do complain about these things. You've got to be clever to spot it. Like, if it's more on the nose, people get more arsey about it because they can actually see it. Whereas if you go back and you watch it, you realise it's been there the whole bloody time.
But it's the thing of, like, it's not even the whole... I mean, this is a very different conversation. I will try not to get too into it because it does make me angry. But the whole thing of, like, oh, you're going all SJW. It's like, no, these people exist. Like, just because you've given them a storyline for no reason, like, literally, you know, The Last of Us having representation in it isn't because they thought, oh my god, we've got to appease the gay masses.
We need to tick all of these boxes to make sure that we don't get cancelled for some reason.
Deal with it. Like, you know, these people exist. Like, the fact that Algie is gay, the fact that the head of the family, Mr. Lloyd, is gay. It's like, it's nothing new. Just, you know, it's just the fact that nowadays these people are fighting for their rights in the same way they deserve to. So... But that's the last we'll say on it, because obviously it makes me angry, and I don't really like to talk about
It's a huge debate to have, and it's one of those things that it will come up again in Doctor Who. Like, as I said this when I was doing ups and downs and stuff, like Praxius, for all of its faults, had a fantastic gay relationship explored during that episode, and it wasn't the whole point, which is what people usually get pissed off with. If they'd have turned round and made a big deal about Captain Jack in 2005 being a gay character, it would have probably been better received, because it's not that it's oversaturated, but because representation has become much more prevalent across media. There are people who now just get sick of it.
I don't even think it's that. I think it's the fact that, like back in 2005, you don't have the kind of instantaneous reaction that you have now. So, like, now we have Twitter, we have Facebook, we have, like, all the social media that is so, like, our ethos, like, from millennials kind of onwards, like Gen Z, whatever, we're all kind of grown up with this instantaneous, like, life. Like, you know, you want something, you order it on Amazon Prime, you get it the next day. Like, no one has to wait for anything anymore. And so having I don't think it's even an oversaturation in, like, you know, because I still don't think there's enough gay representation, but it's people's instant reactions to it that are making it seem
it look like
it's an issue. Because back in the day, it's like someone sees someone gay on television and they'd have to write to the BBC to make it apparent that they were annoyed with it, so you don't get to hear about it. Whereas now you hear about it more often, and I think that's what causes the issues. It isn't the fact that people are being like, you know, that shows and stuff have more features of it. It's that you just can't hear the arseholes. And personally, I wish we could go back to a time where you can't hear arseholes. But yeah, it's one of those things, annoyingly, that just is kind of. But I mean, like, rolling back to Captain Jack, and trying to get a little bit more back on topic. I do really enjoy that scene where he goes over to speak to Algie, and you left with the Doctor and Rose, and the Doctor's explaining to Rose about what happens with the repopulation of, like, human races kind of going off and spreading their dancing as, like, you know.
Yeah, Rose is kind of like, oh, but I thought I could, like, I thought I had a chance with him, but then he's going off and implying that he wants to be with Algie, and I'm guessing that Rose doesn't really appreciate or understand like bisexuality or
pansexuality
or pansexuality or hypersexuality or whatever Jack would identify as. And I think obviously we've said that Rose is a very open person. I think she's pretty game to get along with that. Like, the Doctor is like, yeah, whatever. He just kind of goes, oh, for God's sake, don't start. Like David Tennant especially, when Jack's just hitting on everything that moves.
Yeah.
And the Doctor's like, oh, for goodness sake, here we go again. He's not around and saying, no, don't do that because he's a man and you're a man, and oh, like, it's just a case of, oh, for goodness sake, mate, can we stop? Can you stop thinking about putting your dick in that for 5 seconds?
If he does have a dick, I mean.
Now that's a topic we'll have to cover on a future special bonus episode of Escaping Kasterborous. Does Captain Jack
Escaping Kasterborous after dark?
But yeah, that whole sequence, as I said earlier, the like, we didn't appreciate this as kids, and the Doctor's like, yeah, basically the human race evolved, they meet new people, and oh my god, do they get shagged.
And they go off and dance. I love the whole thing. Like,
I love that. Because obviously, again, kids, us being 10 years old when this aired, right over our heads. And all the adults are just like, oh, okay.
Sex jokes.
Like, it's going to happen.
But also the whole, like, I mean, you can understand why this episode is called The Doctor Dances, not just because they've got the dance sequence at the end, but because you've got, like, references to it sort of throughout. Obviously, when Jack's trying to intercept the intercom to stop, like, while he's trying to rescue the Doctor and Rose from that hospital room, and Rose is sort of, she's obviously flirting with the Doctor, sort of being like, come on then, you can dance, because she's got that face on. You know, Rose has that flirty face where she kind of leaves her lips. I mean,
we've seen it throughout the majority of the last episode of her looking at Jack. Like, she's starting to see the Doctor in that way. I think it's because, like, the Doctor has said, like, oh, I'm offended. Like, oh, it basically, like, that implies to me the Doctor's there going, yeah, I would.
I mean, he obviously
and
loves
Rose,
her.
I mean,
We've
obviously,
had this before, like, the girl,
the
we do not
Dalek
save
works
the girl
it out,
you
for
love,
God's
literally.
sake. Yeah, like, I feel like Rose maybe would have gone, okay.
Oh, I think she's done, like, way before.
Okay,
this.
yeah, let's go with that. And yeah, I think you're right. It's a very weird conversation to have. Like, the sort of the sexuality of the Doctor became very much normalized in New Who, because Classic Who just never had it.
Nah, well, like, Classic Who is kind of, I mean, when did Classic Who end? 89?
89.
So before that, you kind of had a lot of, obviously, different times. Like, you know, you wouldn't really hypersexuality wasn't
It's not necessarily it's not even necessarily that. It's just the idea of exploring a relationship between the Doctor and a companion, be it of a genuine, like, attraction, like a love, or like even of a sexual nature.
Yeah,
that's never been
explored. Don't really
get it and I don't ever want them to.
Do you want it in a kind of, do you get it in a sexual nature? I wouldn't say it's sexual, it's more of a kind of just flirtatious.
It is there's a bit of flirting, but I think the connection that we see between the Doctor and Rose, more specifically Tennant's Doctor and Rose, it is love.
Oh,
it's
definitely.
Just like, I am in love with you. Whereas the other way around is a bit different. I mean, admittedly, like, with Martha, that's different. And we will get to that.
Don't talk to me about Martha. Let's just, we'll get to her when we get to her, okay?
But
I don't like her.
I'm hoping when we get to season 3 that you start to see things differently, because amount, like, there is when you go back through series 3 with Martha and her approach, her sudden wooing by the Doctor, like, it's so sudden. That kiss in Smith and Jones.
I just rolled my eyes so hard they fell out the back of my head.
And she's proper just like, oh, hello. But then you also realise that we don't know whether the Doctor half clocks onto this, and he treats her like crap.
I just don't like
the series.
I mean, I know we'll get to it, but like, I just don't like the way she treats him as if he's the bad guy for not loving her back. I'm like, Martha, you met him for 5 minutes and you were already head over heels for him. That's not a thing. But also, he's literally just lost the woman he loves. Give him a break. You can't treat him like you're the most special thing in the universe. Like, I know, I've never met anybody that wasn't special. Yeah, well, you're not that special, so sit down.
Wow.
No, I'm joking.
Wow.
That's horrible.
Look forward to season 3 of Escaping Kasterborous.
I've rewatched it several times, and I just don't understand her point. Like, she's not got a leg to stand on, really. Like, oh my god, you're just not in love with me, so therefore I'm taking myself out of the situation. Good, that's what you should do, but just don't make a big deal out of it. In case you can't tell, I'm not keen on Martha's trope. I like her I like the story of her character.
Series 3 is good, and like her relevance because Doctor Who suffers, not so much now, at least not recently, suffers from a huge deal of important companion syndrome. And Martha's one is, I think, it works better. It's better fitted into their series compared to...
I think the thing about
Donna.
Yeah. I think the thing about so you don't like Donna, I really like Donna.
We're getting really ahead of ourselves. We'll get to Donna. I don't hate her. No. But
I think the thing about super important companions, though, is like, you know, like you said, they are very overdone. Martha's being super important is kind of like it's a coincidence.
It's a coincidence of the series.
Yeah, but it's almost like it's not like an overarching plot. Yeah, but it's almost kind of also taken away from her a bit. But anyway, that is a very, very future episode that we will try and get to at some point.
Yeah,
we've sort of skipped ahead a bit there.
To sort of like, because obviously we've covered basically all the things that happen, like the Doctor saying everybody lives. I said this in a video. The Doctor says, just this once, Rose, everybody lives. And, you know, he's really ecstatic because the threat of the week, the monster of the week, has been defeated. The people who have been infected, they all survive. It's all great.
And the lady's leg grows back.
The lady's leg grows back. I've always read that scene as going, everybody lives, Rose, just this once, everybody lives. And it's like, that's really great, Doctor, except can you hear the bombs dropping and everyone dying in London in the Blitz? It's like, that's reading into it a bit deep.
Yeah,
I will
think
admit.
So. I mean, I don't think he meant that.
No, I know, but I've always read that scene and gone, yeah, but what about all the dead people? I said this in a list. I said this in a voiceover. I don't know whether it might be out on the channel now. And I just was like, everybody lives, Rose. Everybody lives, except for the people that died in the war, Doctor. But okay.
Lol, bye. That's
that. Last big question, big thing that's always fascinated me about the Doctor's answers as an episode. I find it amazing the Doctor has programmed a disco setting in the TARDIS.
A disco setting?
He can flick a switch and make all the lights go. Or they all dance around, don't they? As he's dancing, all the lights in the TARDIS are all flashing in, not in time, but they're all just like, did we not paying attention?
I mean, I was more paying attention to the fact that he can't click in time at all.
That's true. Admittedly, I don't think that they had music on set.
No, they wouldn't have done.
But yeah, he can't click in time. But the whole TARDIS is like the lights, all the consoles flashing, the wall, there's you know, like on the walkway around the outside, there's like 3 lights on there.
Yeah.
They're all like alternating, they're all flashing away. And I just love the idea that the TARDIS has a disco button.
I mean, the TARDIS has everything.
The TARDIS has everything, but it also has a disco button.
Setting. Disco just drops from the ceiling.
Can we see the disco TARDIS again at some point in the future? If I
hope so.
ever find myself as a writer or a producer or the showrunner of Doctor Who in the future, I promise to you, kind listeners, that I will bring back the disco TARDIS. Or I will write in a disco room, because the TARDIS doesn't get explored on any kind of story focused basis. Like in the 4th Doctor's serial, like they just sort of wander into one of the old control rooms, him and Sarah Jane, and it's like, cool, let's just do that. Whereas it's only ever very specifically like in The Doctor's Wife or Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS where they actually explore more of the TARDIS.
Oh, Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS is good. Wait, which one am I thinking of?
Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS is the one with Clara. And
no,
Matt.
I'm thinking of The Doctor's Wife.
You're thinking of The Doctor's Wife.
Yeah, ignore me.
Journey to the Centre of the TARDIS is...
It's interesting for different reasons.
It's Series 7, which... Get excited for Series 7 of the podcast, folks, because Series 7 sucks.
Hey.
IMO, there's like 2 good episodes, the rest of it's all toss.
That's gonna be fun.
But we keep jumping ahead, but I think it's because we've kind of wrapped up The Empty Child and the Doctor Dancers.
Hey, I'm impressed, 52 minutes. We did.
I know, we're doing well, yeah. For a podcast we thought we wouldn't be that long.
We went off tangent a little bit, but that's fine.
It's stuff to discuss. At the end of the day, we open this podcast, or I opened the podcast with a big old monologue about my life.
Yay.
I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah.
Sure.
But yeah, I adore these episodes, even though they scared me so much as a kid, but I think that's why I love them. Yeah. Whenever I find something that terrifies me, I always seem to want to read into it. It's kind of like what I mentioned about Saw. Like, I hate the Saw films. I can't watch them. I just don't do gornography films. I don't understand the appeal. I don't mind it in like small bursts, like when I went to go and see Halloween, the new one.
Yeah.
And that's got some pretty bad kills in it, but because they're minor,
for like an effect.
Like you see a guy's head get stamped on, and it's like, cool.
Oh, fun.
Thanks. Yeah. I think I did kind of like, oh no, a moment there. There are certain things I can't do, but like Saw is one of those things I can't do, and yet I researched it and I read all the backstory because it's all genuinely fascinating.
I think that's because it makes it less scary though if you read kind of all of that sort of stuff.
And The Empty Child is one of those things where I've always been fascinated by it. I'm going to have to watch that second.
I'm really sorry, by the way, if anyone can hear my tummy rumbling. It's like really gurgling in the background. I'm really hungry.
I can't hear it. I'm going to have to make dinner straight after this.
I hope you can't hear it either because it is really going.
I can't hear it.
My bad.
It's why, like, when I first rode the Tower of Terror at Disneyland Paris, it terrified me, so I had to research it. And The Empty Child is one of those things that I read into so much because it scared me so much.
I think
it's
a lot
what fascinated
of people...
me about the war, about the Second World War, that setting. Not so much because it had aliens in it, but just seeing the... That's not really the best word, but the aesthetic of the war. Yeah. Seeing that sort of sudden change in society fascinated me. So I loved reading about the war back when I was young.
I think this was quite a few people's favourite episode as well, because we had a lot of people on the YouTube thing.
A lot of people jumped onto the podcast.
Like, oh my god, I'm so excited for this episode.
Because it was this episode. And I'm not surprised, really. I did expect this one to get like oh god, it's The Empty Child. Like, this is what scared people. And I'm hoping that I've had people say to me, like, they've been going through Eccleston for the first time, like, properly. They probably just breezed over it, but because they've had the chance to like sit and watch it and then obviously hear us like break it down a bit more, have that chance to really appreciate it. Because I mean, we said this before, me and Amy already appreciate Eccleston so much.
Don't skip 9.
Never skip 9, and this is why. And we'll cover this more, like we'll do our general thoughts on series 1 after the series. Like, we're going to do an extra podcast for each series to talk about what we've seen, rank the episodes, I guess, and we'll just talk about it as a whole. But so many people are going through this and realizing why he's so good. And Empty Child, Doctor Dancers, I think, is one of those two-parters that really does stand out. I still think it's one of the best stories / two-parters of the whole of Doctor Who.
Oh, of Doctor Who in general,
New Who especially. But like, it's just so good because so like I said, everything works. Nothing feels surprisingly tacked on.
No.
Like, the I said last week about how it started out as just, here's a Chula warship, big deal, and then it branches and branches and branches into something more so naturally and so well.
Yeah, it does it really kind of like... And the way the Doctor pieces it together in like little tiny bits here and there. So like Rose's rope burn and then the nanogenes on the ship and just not really. And then obviously the Tudor warship. Like, I think he knows almost straight away that like there's obviously been something, like, you know, when Jack says it was empty.
That was one of the things back in the day that really got me. That really like, whoa, oh god, yeah. You know, what do you expect? Bandages, cough drops. It's actually full of nanogenes. It was like, oh god,
oh my god, like, mind blown.
Proper got me.
Yeah.
And that's why we held Moffat, or we still hold Moffat for his standalone episodes and some of the stuff he did, some of the episodes he wrote in series 5 to 7. Sorry, 5 to 7? 5 to 10. Like, why we appreciate so much of his work because he can craft stuff like this.
Oh, someone else mentioned in the comments last time, I know I said this to you already, Rich, but when we were talking about monsters that really scared us, someone in the YouTube comments for last week said about the midnight entity. And that, I agree. I heartily agree. That was hella scary, that whole midnight. But we will get to that episode because that is a good episode.
But yeah, did the empty child scare you as a kid? You have to let us know in the comments section below if you are listening on the old YouTube. If you are listening to us on whatever podcast platform you use, then you can tweet us at WhoCulture. You can use the hashtag escaping Kasterborous. It's there on the title if you don't know how to spell Kasterborous. You can follow me on Twitter at pickupchangetoe.
And you can follow me at Ames_Elizabeth.
Next week, we are heading back to Cardiff to refuel, and we're going to go and bump... No, I was about to say... I was meant to say rub shoulders, but my first thought was to say bump uglies.
Oh,
we're not.
No.
We are not going to be bumping uglies with Blonfell Foch Passamir Day Slovene, because we're coming... Hey, girl, do you want something big and green and blobby?
No, not at all.
Slightly farty.
With a zip on it. Oh, we've got 2 areas to go into there.
I mean...
Let's just ignore that.
I mean, let's face it, a zip's going to hurt on the old downstairs. But anyway...
Oof. This is a weird conversation.
That's like catching it in your zipper.
No!
Puts a whole new meaning to catching it in your zipper.
I'm not allowing you. I am not allowing you back on next week, okay? I'm just going to do the whole episode
Amy's going to monologue it. Thank God it's the end of the podcast. Thank you all so much for listening.
Thank you.
We hope to see you next week. If you have any questions regarding Boomtown, please let us know on Twitter, again, at WhoCulture. Use the hashtag escapingkasterborous. You can follow me at pickupchangetoe and Amy at Ames_Elizabeth. Until then, take care of yourselves. We will see you next week.
Bye.
Goodbye.